This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
This job would be great if it wasn't for the fucking customers.
You're always the stupid. It is you take lessons. Just calm down.
Oh, fuck you!
You can't handle the truth.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
In other words, be nice, asshole. Oh, by the mid-2000s, recognition of the opioid crisis was starting to become understood by the government, by regulators, and even by Big Pharma. And in 2008, a study showed that of the available turf drugs, these fentanyl drugs that were on the market, they were only prescribed to cancer patients 1 out of every 5 prescriptions. Most prescribers who wrote them were in pain management. And Kapoor knew this. And this is what pisses me off about him. He knew that this was creating addicts and destroying fucking lives. But he felt, and he said at the time, that getting this drug approved as just for breakthrough cancer pain will give them a crowbar to get in on the pain management side. Like he didn't develop, he says, oh, I developed this because of my beautiful bunny who died from breast cancer and she was in so much pain. But that's not really what he wanted it for. That was the cover story to get into the pain management market. And he knew it. He knew it going in. Because that was, 4 or 5 years?
If you know what? If you're that fucking gung-ho about finding some sort of pain management cure or whatever the fuck he's supposed to be doing, why didn't he put that money towards research to end cancer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That seems like it would have been money better spent than coming up with this drug that's now killing all these fucking people.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Now, at the time, there were all these lawsuits going on with Cephalon, with Purdue Pharma, and he knew this. He knew that there were problems with these drugs and that there were lawsuits and things that were coming to happen. Like, he knew this. And to me, the fact that this was still years away from him getting into the market, but that he was working towards this goal, it seems so odd to me. The way I would equate it is if you read the Ronan Farrow article about Harvey Weinstein and decided now's a good time to be a predator because there's a job opening.
Right.
Like, it's weird to me. Like, that's how I look at him. He knew that these companies were in deep shit, but that they had created addicts and now there was a job opening.
Right.
So what made Subsys more appealing is that it was a spray, which was a higher price, and it worked faster. It worked faster than the patch. It worked faster than the lollipop. Now, the FDA, this is what I think is interesting. The FDA doesn't necessarily approve a drug as safe. They're looking to see if a drug is safe enough.
Right.
So when you hear those,
It's not going to kill everybody.
Right.
Right. When you hear those drug commercials that may lead to shortness of breath or death or cancer, it's like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah.
What the FDA is looking at the data to say, okay, did a small enough number of people die to approve this?
Which I just feel like that's so asinine.
It is. It's gross.
Yeah.
It's gross. And the fact that they were looking at this and they knew what was going on at the time. And Kapoor could have retired at this point. He had millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. He could have lived comfortably and walked away.
Just a greedy fucker.
But it just wasn't enough. And I don't even know if it was greed. A part of me is like, I think it's just about the power and the respect and just having it to have it.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I
feel like somebody like that is using what happened with his wife as a way to maybe use that as an excuse to be greedy and still cover it up with grief.
Mm-hmm.
As a way to be like, oh, well, you can't really do anything to me. I'm doing this so that more families don't have to go through what I went through.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fuck him.
So around this time, Purdue Pharma, which you and I have talked about Purdue Pharma before on the show. This is back in 2007. Purdue pled guilty to misbranding OxyContin as less addictive and less prone to abuse, and agreed to pay $600 million to resolve it. And 3 top executives pled guilty to misdemeanor charges and had no prison time.
A misdemeanor.
Of course.
But if I go down the street and sell some fucking oxys or some crack,
you're going to jail
or whatever, I'm going to fucking prison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
It's not addictive. What are you worried about?
Yeah. The company says it. It says it right on the label.
Might as well be selling Flintstone vitamins. Get the fuck out of here.
Now, at the same time, in 2007, Ventura, the FDA was starting to realize these turf drugs were fucking dangerous. People were starting to die from these. And they issued a public health advisory warning people about the proper prescribing of drugs after several patient deaths. They basically reminded doctors, yo, this could kill people. Make sure you're prescribing it to people who actually need it. What is crazy to me is the company that produced Cephalon, Cephalon, the company that produced Ventura, had the balls at the same time this was happening to ask the FDA, hey, can we market this to just pain patients? We'd like to expand the labeling. Is that cool? Read the room, not the time.
They don't care about that, though.
I found that to be amazing. This is the moment you chose to ask that question. But in 2008, they pled guilty. They paid $425 million in settlements for the unlawful marketing practices. In the hearing, a risk management presentation showed data that the original clinical study of some of the drugs were stolen, and patients showed abhorrent drug use behavior, which was not common in clinical trials. So even in the trials, they saw people get addicted to this shit like that and were doing things that were outside of who they were.
They were doing crackhead shit.
Yeah.
That's what they were doing.
Pretty much. Now, this fucking pisses me off too, and we're going to take another Jessica break. One more thing. Why is this not already a thing? Part of the settlement was they had to agree to be under a 5-year corporate integrity agreement. They had to submit to audits and agree to be closely scrutinized by regulators.
That they're probably paying off. They'll have their hands in their pockets. So what fucking good is that?
But here's my question. You're a drug company producing a Schedule II narcotic. Why is it not already a thing that you can be audited?
It should be.
And inspected. Why are you under a special agreement to be good for 5 years? What the fuck? Like, that blew my mind. Why is that not already a thing? Why does that have to be something special now that you killed people? Now you got to have detention.
Right.
What the fuck are you talking about? That really pissed me off. So, again, for my blood pressure, Jessica break number 2.
All right. So, did you know that there is a company named Eternal Reefs that will turn reefs, like coral reefs,
Okay.
that will turn dead bodies into an ocean reef?
Shut the...
I know you can plant someone like...
Right.
I know you can plant somebody in a tree,
because we've talked about becoming a haunting forest.
Right.
Yes, I think we should all do this.
Right?
We
Right.
should
I
be
told
buried
Carly
together.
whenever she dies, I'm going to plant her in my backyard and decorate her for every season.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
I've never heard of this. This is fascinating.
right. So they take, see here, the company Eternal Reefs offers an innovative solution for people that, romanticize about how they're going to spend their afterlife. It mixes the cremated remains of a person with concrete to create a pearl onto which loved ones can etch personal messages, handprints, or mementos. The pearl is then encased in a reef ball that is dropped into the ocean, where it provides a new habitat for fish and other sea life, helping encourage a vibrant ecosystem.
Tanya looks perplexed, and,
And
I
you're,
am
amazed.
I am fascinated. I want to do
Tanya's like,
this.
what the fuck? And you're like, amazing.
Tanya's like, why? And I'm like, why not? Like, that's really the dynamic going on. Why and why not? That sounds awesome. I think I want to do that.
right?
Tanya.
So, if you ever decide to look into it, it's Eternal Reefs.
I dig. What is wrong? Why do
Wait.
you look like you just smelled a fart?
thinking about fish fucking and pooping on her for the rest of her afterlife.
That and people walking around on me and shit.
People don't walk on coral
Well, I
reef.
know that, but over there fucking with it and stuff. I mean,
Poking the sea urchins.
One day when the oceans are gone, people thousands of years from now will find me.
Right?
and find my messages from my family and maybe my wedding rings encased. That would, can you imagine an archaeologist finding that years from? That's amazing. I am really into this. Yes. What do you want to happen to your body when you die?
I don't fucking know, but I don't know. I don't think that I want it floating around in fucking Florida somewhere. Like
Florida. You get to pick the location?
I don't know. I'll research that while
What if it was in Jamaica where I got married?
That would be pretty awesome.
That would be come on. That's romantic.
For you.
John, you can't even with me right now.
The only experience I have with Jamaica is the dude I dated named Virgo, and he was a fucking nut, so I'm good.
You're like, no. Mm-mm. Okay. So around that time, they moved Insys to Arizona, and Kapoor tried to take the company public twice. It didn't really work out. They were really struggling with the Marinol drug development and getting through all the trials and everything else. Now, Babbage did agree to move from Chicago to Arizona, and this seemed to be the point where Babbage and Kapoor really became more like a father-son mentor relationship. He actually lived in his guest house. His guest house was a mile away from the house. So, okay.
Yeah.
May as well just be your house. But okay, fine. But he was getting closer and closer and closer to him. And eventually they were at a dinner one night and with investors. And Kapoor just said in the dinner, because the investors were like, well, you're going to be the CEO, he said to Kapoor. And Kapoor was like, no, Babbage is going to do it. And Babbage was like,
huh?
I'm going to be the CEO of a drug company? I don't know anything about pharma. What the fuck are you talking about?
Oh.
And that's how he just learned he was going to be the CEO.
Oh.
Just out of nowhere. Okay.
I guess, yeah.
Sounds great. That'll come up later in his sentencing.
See you Monday.
Excuse. See you bitches Monday.
Right.
You're going to be the CEO. Have fun. Deuces. So at that point, the phase 3 results came in and they were stellar. They found that it worked fast, like way faster than they were even hoping for. Now they had the drug, they were about to get it approved, et cetera, et cetera. But Babbage, as the CEO, didn't really know anything about marketing. Usually, after a company does something like this, they turn around and sell the drug to a bigger company. And they say, okay, we developed it, we got it approved, blah, blah, blah. Now you market it, because they have the infrastructure to do that. Kapoor did not want to do that. He wanted to control it from end to end and make all the money, not just a slice of the money. But since Babbage had no idea how to market it, that's when he brought in Matt Napolitano. Matt Napolitano, the third horseman of the apocalypse, he had managed turf products at Cephalon, and he knew how it worked. He was heavily involved in the launch of Fentora. Like I said, he was analytical. He was a warrior. He was shocked when he came on that Kapoor didn't want to hire a legal or a compliance department, because he was at Cephalon when all that shit went down, as far as, hey, you're marketing this shit in a way that is illegal. Right. You can't say to pain specialists, hey, you don't just have to, do this for cancer. You could do it for anything. Like, he was there. He knew, but he stayed.
Yeah.
There were personal reasons for that. I do understand it. His son had cancer, and his son, they picked up and moved to Arizona. They had to change doctors and, his treatment plan and changing insurances and all that shit. Right. Like, that's, it's a problem. So I do feel like he was a little bit trapped. But Kapoor would refuse, like, anytime he would say, like, we need compliance, we need legal, Kapoor would even yell at him and saying, we're using a low-cost model. Okay. And Babbage would tell him, look, dude, there's no use in arguing with him. So Matt developed a playbook. And the playbook had a simple strategy. It was to win the loyalty of a small group of doctors that would be loyal to them, not to their patients.
Gotcha. Or
their profession. How can we make these guys loyal to us? They started out with getting sales data. This is interesting. Each script is tied to a prescriber ID. So whenever the cash register rings, basically at your pharmacy, that info can be sold to marketing companies. And the Supreme Court has ruled this is legal as a First Amendment issue because it's not necessarily tied to my name.
Right.
Okay.
So it's just data.
Pretty much. They found through their research there was only about 170 doctors out of 110,000 prescribing doctors. Only 170 prescribed the bulk of turf drugs. That 170 prescribed 30% of all the turf drugs. But they were consolidated into specific geographic areas. So what they looked for, and they ranked people, they ranked doctors. They called them decile 10s. They were the top 25 prescribing doctors of turf drugs that prescribed 10% of all turf drugs in the entire country. 10% came from these 25 doctors. And they all lived in very, concentrated places. People came to them from around a specific area. So they felt like, okay, we can build up a marketing and a sales team and target these small pockets of regions,
Right.
basically. And they got a bunch of them on board. They brought them in and they wined and dined them. They called it an advisory board with Coles. They called them key opinion leaders. And basically they showed them, they were like, look, this is way more effective, et cetera, et cetera. They started hiring a sales team. They hired mostly young, attractive women.
And you know what? That's the thing. So when anytime you see like those pharmaceutical reps, they're always like some bimbo looking ladies that,
Oh, yeah.
they always have like Starbucks.
We'll get to the stripper that they hired here in a minute.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Titties and pills. Titties and pills.
Oh, yeah. Babbage had affairs with at least 5 of them, including he called it a one-day relationship with the head of
That's
HR.
not a relationship. That's a fling. That's a hump.
He literally called it a one-day relationship with the head of HR.
Stupid.
Okay. Now, like Enron, if you remember when we talked about Enron liked to hire Ivy League people, preferably PhDs.
Right.
Kapoor liked to hire PhDs too.
PhDs in what?
PhDs as in poor, hungry, and driven.
Aww.
That's what they called them.
That's tacky.
Eventually, they called them PhDs, poor, hungry, and dumb. They literally set these people up to break the law for them to make money.
Yeah.
They knew it. They hired people, like there were guidelines as far as who they wanted. Somebody with like 2 years of pharmacy sales experience and a bachelor's degree. Sorry for the dog howling if you hear it. That is a dog. It's my neighbor's dog. I apologize. I know. Tanya's face. That's a dog.
Is that a dog?
That is a dog.
Really?
I know. It's
They
awful.
need to take that thing to get looked at. It's really
She
wrong.
does it maybe 2 or 3 times a day for about a minute and then she's done.
Sirens.
Yeah, pretty
That's
much.
awful.
Yeah. So they start hiring these people. Now, some of the people that they hired that did actually have pharma experience were really freaked out that they were hiring these young idiots.
Yeah.
Because they were like, wait a minute, you're hiring these people not to sell like CPAP equipment or a diabetes medication. Right. You're asking them to sell a Schedule II narcotic. It is very easy for you to break the law if you don't know what to do. And you're hiring people that, quite frankly, don't have the skills, experience, or knowledge to not break the law. But they were doing it anyway. They didn't care. They were cheap. They hired them super cheap. But after the launch party, Napolitano got up there as the head of marketing and coming from Cephalon and knowing all the problems that they had, he got up and gave them the little spiel about this is what you say. And Kapoor lost his shit. He was enraged because the way Napolitano had presented it, he had told them that they should advise right up front that the drug is for use for breakthrough cancer pain. He also said to advise that it's 30 minutes. It has a 30-minute effectiveness in relieving pain. Kapoor was fucking furious. He wanted to say, this is good for all patients. Pain is pain. And this freaked Napolitano out because he had been at Cephalon and they had gotten in trouble for that. He was like, no, it is not. Yes, pain is pain, but what people need it for, to live a productive life versus be comfortable in your dying days, 2 very fucking different things.
Right.
Kapoor did not care. Did not care. And he insisted that he go out and say this was more effective, technically could relieve pain within 5 minutes, not 30 minutes. Technically, legally, you can only say what the FDA has approved you to say.
Right.
Kapoor was like, no, you're going to say 5 minutes and you're not going to mention cancer at all. If this was for Editha, if this was for Bunny, then what are we doing here?
Right.
This is bullshit. So Kapoor left the room, and the VP of sales, Sean Simon, flat out said, "We can't do this." And Napolitano was apoplectic. So Babbage went out and did it and told everybody, "This is what you got to say." Napolitano said, "I know this is going to be a fucking disaster." Now, it was slow going at first. Cephalon had a really strong foothold and relationships with these doctors, and they struggled. They struggled hard. They couldn't really get past this hold that Cephalon had. But then they ended up getting a new tool by accident. It was a system that was created because the government was getting concerned about turf drugs that they wanted a special monitoring protocol. But the key to it, though, was the drug companies created it and they would police it, not the government.
Oh, my God.
I know, it's fun, right? It's called Rems, the Risk Evaluation and Mitigation System.
So you're pushing this drug off on people, but you're also going to regulate. Get the fuck out of here.
Here's what's interesting about it. It allowed them to track doctors and patients and know where to hit the hardest. So all it ended up doing
Was giving them better targets.
was giving them better marketing data,
They knew how to sell it better.
which
Who
is
to sell it
awesome.
to.
Exactly. Like, you're just getting down into the nitty-gritty of targeting.
Wow.
It's gross. It's gross. Now, because it was so slow going at first, Kapoor was frustrated and fired a ton of fucking people. Now, Kapoor, this makes me so angry. Kapoor was looking at the data, and he was looking at people that had been prescribed it, but then stopped taking it. And he was like, wait a minute. The people that are prescribed the lowest amount are more likely to stop taking it. So he basically was telling people, you need to push doctors to start patients at a higher dose level. He gave bonuses to reps who got doctors to write higher dosage as the first script. If a doctor wrote the first script at the highest level, it could actually earn the rep a $1,830 bonus.
So he just paid these doctors to turn these folks into
Addicts.
Addicts.
Yeah. He knew it. He was looking at the data and he was like, no. That smallest dose is not enough to get them hooked. He created addicts. He killed people. Flat out, point blank, and period. He killed people. So I needed Jessica break.
Okie dokie.
Well, before we get on to our new one, so as far as
Can
the
you choose?
eternal reefs,
Mhm.
it doesn't necessarily say that whether or not you can choose, but it does say that reefs right now are placed in 25 locations off of the coast of Florida, the Panhandle, Gulf Coast, and the Atlantic Coast, as well as in Maryland, New Jersey, North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, and Virginia. And you can also do this for your pets.
Okay, the pets feels like a bridge too far.
Really? The pets? Well, you don't want to put Frodo in your reef with you? All right.
I love you, Pete, but no.
All right.
I'm not paying for Pete to be a pearl.
So, did you know that vacuum cleaners were originally horse-drawn?
What?
One of the earliest known vacuum cleaners was so large that it had to be hauled from house to house via horse-drawn carriage. Its giant hoses were popped through the windows of customers' houses, and a gas-powered motor generated the suction that pulled the dirt and debris into a glass container where onlookers could gawk at the volume of filth coming from their neighbors' homes.
That is so embarrassing. Who would pay for, well, I guess if you really want your house clean, but goddamn.
So
That is fucking hilarious.
Well, but you think about it, though. You see somebody's house getting suctioned and you see all the nastiness. You got to think, oh, I wonder how much is in my house. I better pay to have them come suck my house clean.
Oh my God.
Could you imagine, like...
I would be so embarrassed. I'm embarrassed when George empties our vacuum thing.
the
in
canister?
It's so, because there's so much fucking dog hair. It's ridiculous. I'm like, do it in the dark. Don't let people, don't go out to the trash can and empty that during the day. don't want people to see.
Wait, hold on. I'm going to see if I'm going to find a date really quick. 1868.
That far back.
Wow.
I really would think that. I thought that would be something like from the 1910s or 20s. I'm surprised it went that far. Huh. Now I've got another piece of useless knowledge. No offense.
Yeah,
Woohoo! No, it's
I love
okay.
I'll take my useless knowledge.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. So because the head of sales they were struggling to break through, blah, 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 blah. They ended up firing him, and basically he was like, Babbage, you do it. And Babbage was like, I don't fucking know how to do this. This is stupid. So that's where they brought in the salesman, Alec Burlikoff. This piece of shit. Just a slimy bastard. This is a little bit more about his early career, where he got in deep shit early. He annoys me. Okay, so he went to work for Eli Lilly. And at the time, Eli Lilly's patent, because there's a patent on drugs for a certain amount, like Viagra is the one I always think of as the one I know about. Viagra was the one that they had a corner on the market. The only drug, there was no generic. You couldn't have a generic. I think it's 5 years. Mm-hmm. And then after the 5 years has run out, then there can be a generic. So now there's generics of Viagra. Okay, fine. Prozac was that drug. Eli Lilly's patent was about to run out, meaning that generics could be sold at a fraction of the price. And Eli Lilly was worried. Burlikoff here had an idea, came up with a scheme that ended up making huge news, infuriating patients and regulators. He created a promotion that encouraged high prescribing physicians to generate a list of patients they were prescribing Prozac to and write a mass prescription for them, unprompted from the patient. Patient didn't ask for this. So then what would happen is patients would end up getting a form letter signed by their doctor, but that comes from the pharmacy saying, congratulations, you've got 6 months of this drug. And they felt like, you're using my personal information to send me junk mail about my antidepressant?
Right.
What the fuck are you doing? And they were livid. Regulators were, and this was just a way to boost up the sales, because here's the thing, whether those patients got them filled or not, it counted as written and insurance companies paid for it. Whether you picked it up or not, your insurance company fucking paid for it.
So even if you took it back, it was like, I didn't ask for this.
Didn't matter.
It didn't matter.
Didn't matter.
That's fucked up.
Mm-hmm. It was a huge scandal. Eli Lilly fired 8 salespeople, including Burlikoff, and marched them out as a big show by security. But here's the thing. The 8 sued Eli Lilly, saying, you knew about it before we did it. Then we got caught, and you fired us. And Burlikoff's argument was, if you Google me now, people see like this, you put my name out there to the public as somebody who did this, and now my reputation is ruined, blah, 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 blah. After taxes and lawyer fees, he walked away with about $100,000 settlement from Eli Lilly. And I don't know why Eli Lilly would settle that if they didn't know.
Right.
If they hadn't done it, why would you settle that?
Right.
I'm sorry. No. You fucking know. My opinion, Eli Lilly, but I think you fucking know. What's wild is his argument of, you Google me and my name comes up. Googling him actually enhanced his reputation. Because of this, he got hired a few days later at another pharma giant, which is a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson. And it was a better job. He was like, sweet, thanks. Breaking the law helped him.
Well, obviously, because, if people start, like, the most searched for stuff whenever you go to Google people, right, or Google anything, like, if you put in Eli, a couple of things are going to pop up, and if it's somebody whose name has recently been searched a lot, it's going to pop up, and they're going to see this guy automatically. Right. So that makes sense. Yeah.
But he eventually went to work at Cephalon. He sold Actique and Fentora for years. He actually worked as a rep, became a manager, and he got a reputation for basically pushing the rules. Like, people knew he was bleh. But when he heard about Insys, he was interested because it was an opportunity to go way high. He didn't just want to be a manager or a director. He wanted to be the guy.
Yeah.
And he went in and sold himself hard to Kapoor. Brought a brag book and everything. I'm going to do
Not
it.
a resume, a brag book. Here's all the people I suckered and addicted.
He would, in court, In court later on, Babbage, the CEO, not Berlikoff, Babbage would say, oh yeah, he flat out told us when we asked him, how are you going to do this? He flat out said, oh, I'm going to bribe doctors. He was like, did he use the word bribe? And he was like, yeah.
And
Kapoor hired him.
Wow.
Okay. Sounds great. So he came on board. They brought him on as like a regional manager first, as kind of like a tryout. He brought in a friend named Rowan, who was only assigned to one, what they call whales, the big guy they want to get, right? And he got him. And the rest is history. They made him the VP. Even though there were people within the company who had worked with him before that flat out called him a walking compliance problem. Oh, and by the way, the people that told them, oh yeah, he's a walking compliance problem, don't hire him. Yeah, he fired them.
Yeah.
As soon as he got it, which was super fun. But the big thing that Babbage did, and this is what got them in so much fucking trouble. The big thing that Babbage did was he pushed a speaker program. Speaker programs are legal ways to bribe doctors. You basically say to a doctor, hey, speak to a group of medical professionals about our drug. We will pay you. We'll pay for the meal, blah. And it's not like speaking in front of 200 people in an auditorium. It's like 5 to 10, maybe 15 people at a dinner.
Okay.
And that's it. It is understood in the industry that a speaker program is not for the people listening. It is for the people speaking. It is a way to bribe them legally. And the expectation is, I'm going to pay you to speak about my drug, but I'm also paying you to write scripts for my drugs because I'm paying you.
These people just find the most crazy fucking ways to get around.
Oh, they learn. One of the most interesting things that I thought this was, wow. I believe it was Pfizer that got in a shit ton of trouble at one point because on their sales calls, when they would log the call, kind of like we had in our call center, when they would log the call, they would have to freehand type notes. Those freehand type notes got them in a shit ton of trouble. Saying like, pill mill, yes. Like they would literally type that out, knowing they were doing this shit. Got them in a ton of trouble. So the industry, again, they adapt, they learn. The industry changed, so now instead of free typing notes, everything is a drop down.
Yeah.
You don't type anything freehand.
Right.
Everything is a drop down. And that is by design.
Yeah.
So that you don't get caught.
So you don't put something in that it's not supposed to be there.
Exactly. It's not about protecting the company or the patient or whatever. It's about adapting to the situation.
Yeah.
And covering your ass. Now, they started the speaker program. And at first, Kapoor was pissed because he was writing all these checks for speakers because he was a cheapskate. He was hiring people at the lowest amount that they could possibly do, like unless they performed and would get bonuses. But he was pissed because he felt like, well, I'm paying these people. Why aren't they writing my scripts? And he demanded that Napolitano, and this is what fucked them later, he demanded that Napolitano run a report just on the doctors that they were paying on the speaker program to see how much Subsys they were prescribing. That's a problem. That's a data trail of you saying, I'm expecting these specific doctors to write my scripts and how much they are writing. Napolitano freaked out. And there's a lot of evidence that he was like, wait, we can't do that. Turned into a big screaming match, the whole nine. Thought he was going to be fired. Babbage came in and was like, no, not yet, but you need to run the report. And he did. He ran it one time. Went into the room, looked at the report. Apparently they left all the copies there and it was supposed to be destroyed. Apparently it wasn't. I don't know how. They didn't really go into that. But they knew. They knew what they were doing. Because they ran that report, they knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
Now, Berlikoff was building his team, and his rock star was a stripper named Sunrise Lee.
Shut up.
I was hoping that it was going to be Cinnamon, but Sunrise is not disappointing.
Or Pebbles.
Pebbles.
I, once again, am encouraging everybody to read the book. Her backstory is kind of fascinating. She was kidnapped as a little kid by her dad, and she literally is one of the first kids on a milk carton. Really interesting backstory on her. But she was a stripper that Berlikoff met one night, and he picked up on the fact that she was a natural salesperson. And she was working him.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah. And she was working him, and he knew it. He could spot, what is you, game recognizes game?
Yeah.
Is that what you always say? Game recognizes game. And he knew it. And he was like, huh, okay. And I mean, Berlikoff was a fucking player, and he was big cokehead, loved, weed and did mushrooms. And he was all over the place. And he was like, a stripper, come work for me.
I'll take 2.
Yeah, pretty much. And of course they started having an affair. Duh. And he hired her, but he didn't hire her as a rep. He hired her as a manager to manage sales reps. Which these sales reps were like, what the fuck? Who is this? They knew from the second they saw her. She didn't know anything about pharma sales. She reminds me of that boss that I had that was just like, oh my God, did you hear Kim Kardashian and Chris Humphries broke up?
Oh my God.
That's so sad because I just love. And that was my boss. You're like, why the fuck are you my boss? Dear God.
Go right straight to hell.
Yeah, it's just gross. So she started and there's a lot of conversations about, this is how you cozy up to a doctor. There was a witness that testified that she gave a doctor a lap dance to get him to, okay, whatever. So Berlikoff is starting to build it up. He's getting them to write the scripts. Okay, fine. But now you've got a second problem. Second problem is actually getting at what they call pull through, which is, this is where the call center aspect comes in. This is where the call center people really fucked up. They created what they called the Insys Reimbursement Center. The initial rollout was successful. They were seeing more scripts, but they still weren't bringing in much profit because the prescriptions weren't getting approved. They had like a voucher program at first that would cover the cost if it didn't get approved, and they were struggling to get it approved because it wasn't for these people. Like the people they were prescribing it to, it wasn't for them. Excuse me. And insurance companies were like, no. So getting approval plus getting pre-approval took a ton of time from doctors and their staff. Spending all this time on the phone and dealing with insurance and trying to convince them and doing all this crap, that costs money. So these doctors are like, yeah, you're bribing me, but then I got to turn around and pay in overtime those bribes.
Yeah.
To these people. Kapoor saw this. He was furious. Mike Gurry was the vice president for managed markets, and he was the point person for insurance issues. And initially, they worked with a third-party processor. They were only getting about 20 to 30% approved. It wasn't going well. Finally, they brought in this woman named Elizabeth Guerreri. She had experience in dealing with insurance, and she had the idea of creating this in-house unit to deal with the nitty-gritty of getting things pulled through. Again, here's the thing about the 4 horsemen, other than Kapoor, so just the 3 horsemen. They all seem to, at different times, have a brain.
Do they share it?
They share it, but it's like they all were standing on a field and there's a line. And 3 of them are like, let's go cross that line. And one of them is going, wait, this is not a good idea. And the other 3 pull them forward. Then they move the line again. And then 3 different ones are like, no, we're going to go. And one more is standing back going, wait a minute. And they just keep, everybody but Kapoor, at different times, each one of them was like, this is a bad idea. And they didn't use the brains all together. It seemed to be the problem. If you put the 4 of them together, they might have a functional, logical, moral brain. But they didn't. So Napolitano objected, but nobody cared. Kapoor wanted to try it. And they started out with a small pilot. 12 doctors sent in opt-in forms for patients and that they wrote scripts to. And Gurry, who was the VP of Managed Markets, told Guerreri that she had to work in the gray. And they came up with the spiel when they would get on the phone with insurance. They would ask on the phone, are you at the doctor's office? And they would say, yes, I'm calling in association with the doctor's office.
In association with the doctor's office?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It could be anybody.
But they said yes. Technically, they said yes. But technically, they said no. So
Right.
It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Does the patient have breakthrough cancer pain? They would say, yes, they have pain. Mm-hmm. Have they tried X, Y, and Z drug? And they would say yes, even though they hadn't. And they said, well, we just assume. They didn't say this out loud, but their justification in their heads was, well, we assume they've probably tried these at some point. Probably. That's really what they thought. Do they have trouble swallowing? That was the key to this drug. Was
The spray.
Was the spray part. And they would say yes. Now, later on the stand, patients would get up and they would play recorded calls. And they would be like, no, I've never. And there were other drugs that the insurance company could see the patient had been prescribed that were pills that clearly they would have to swallow. But it's just call center people. Just no offense to call center people. You know, we love you, but they're just like, get off my phone.
Right.
I just want to be done with
Getting
this.
through the day.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's what they did. They had a cheat sheet that told them
Like a checklist of what they have to...
of the ways to get around these questions. And they got it pulled through. And they turned around and went from 20 to 30% to 60% of these prescriptions being approved for people who didn't
even need them.
Mm-hmm. Nope. So there was a guy that was hired as a pharma rep. His name is Ray Furchek. Excuse me. And Ray Furchek started, like, when he met Burlikoff, at first he was, like, kind of nervous about it. He was like, I don't know this guy. And he came and did a ride-along with him and was giving him, like, tips and stuff. And he was like, okay, this sounds weird. And he called one of his old coworkers that had been let go and was like, why didn't you ever tell me this stuff? And he was like, because what he's telling you to do is illegal.
Oh.
You can't do that. So Furchek starts to get nervous. I am worried about being marched out of here in handcuffs. This is wrong. Yeah. And people told him, if you fight this, if you start going up again, you're going to be blacklisted from this industry. All they're going to do is write a check once again from the fuck up budget that they have, that all companies have now. And Furchek was like, I'm really kind of turned off by this whole thing. So he started gathering evidence, recording calls, recording conversations, gathering documents, all kinds of stuff. And he was the first one to file what they call a qui tam lawsuit. And a qui tam it's an old term that basically translates to in the name of the king. Basically what it does is it's you suing on behalf of the taxpayer. So what you're doing is saying, hey, I know this company is stealing from Medicare and Medicaid. They're stealing from taxpayers, and I'm suing them on behalf of the government. And that's done under seal, so the company doesn't know. And then the government looks into it, and they decide whether they're going to join in on the lawsuit and support it and prosecute it, or if they're just going to say, nope, there's not enough here, or we're not interested, et cetera, et cetera. They looked at everything at the time, and in my opinion, I feel like the government let it go because it's a smaller number of people than Oxycontin, than Vicodin, than it's such a small group that I personally think that's the reason that they were just like, we're short on funds, we're short on resources, and this is a smaller group that we just don't have the time or patience or whatever to go after. They basically told him to drop it. And he was like, okay. And he walked away. It was revealed publicly, but by that point, Insys didn't care. They were making money hand over fist. They had gone public. They were doing the whole, like, they went to the stock exchange and rang the bell. And the day they went public, all kinds of, they were the stars of the market. And they made a lot of money, especially at that time. IPOs and health stocks specifically were going through the roof. And it was a big deal. So Burlikoff was really making everybody feel scared. And Furchek was scared of him. He had left threatening voicemails on doctors' voicemail saying that, nobody fucks over a Burlikoff. And, you betrayed us for writing a prescription for a different drug. Like, he was that kind of crazy. He put in emails to doctors that were part of the speaker program that you should be writing a minimum of 1 script a day. Point blank and period, that's illegal.
Right.
It's saying that this is a bribe to do this. He referred to them, these doctors and emails, as speaker whores.
Speaker whores?
Mm-hmm. That's what he called them.
You're a speaker whore.
Mm-hmm. But Furchek just couldn't get anywhere, and the government dropped it. Thanks for checking out part 2 of our deep dive into Insys and the Hard Sell by Evan Hughes. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the conclusion. Coming at you soon. Love your faces.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.